All right, hello everyone. I'm here with Goly. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's take like 30 seconds just to share to our other pages. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I will do that quickly and then we'll get started into this really fun conversation we're about to have.
Awesome. Let's see. Part of the ladder.
Okay, so I shared it to Heart of the Matter. Are you having success sharing it? Oops.
Yes,
Yeah,
on
I have both of them on now.
mine doesn't show that. Oh, here, maybe this is where. Sorry. Hang on. Sorry. Where's the live? Oh, maybe I should just. Sorry, technologically challenged here.
Okay. Well, you know what? You can share it later.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh, here is the watch party. Oh, there we
Oh,
are.
there you go. Oh yeah, cool.
And then this is the share button. One second. I think because it's a little slow here.
Oh yeah, no, it's slow when you're kind of doing the live stream. That's what happens to me too.
Is it? Okay. All right. Well, where am I? What?
This is what happens to me too. So I'm like, if you don't want to share it right away, it's less stressful just to do it later because it'll go on replay, and then you can put it up when you're not sitting in the live session.
Oh, I see. Okay, that sounds good. It's a little slow here. Oh yeah, I see.
Oh yeah, no, it's slow when you're kind of doing the live stream. That's what happens to me too.
Yeah, maybe I'll just not do that on the computer, so we have just us talking here, and then.
Yeah, so just close out your Facebook because now we're getting the echo.
I see the echo. Yeah, I closed my Facebook. I'll just do it. See if I can do it on my phone later.
Cool. All right. Well, hello.
Hello.
The technology's done. Now we're just going to have a good conversation. So I can tell folks a little bit about why we decided to have the conversation, but I'd love to start with just giving you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself. So we were like, oh, who's this person that's on the live right now? What do we want to know about Goly?
Okay, so I'm a mom of 3, so I'll start from that. I think that changed my whole world was when I became a mom.
Yes.
So I have a son who just turned 8, another daughter who's 5.5, and then my other son just turned 3. And so just a little bit of background to that. Like when I immigrated from Iran to Canada during the Iran-Iraq war. So I was 8 years old. Actually, my son's 8 now. Very interesting that I immigrated at the same age.
Yes.
To just kind of like leave the war. And my mom always saw Canada or America as like the land of opportunity, right? So many of us immigrants think that way. So she brought us to Canada and to have like the education and the whole opportunities that are here and the safety and the less corruption. You know, she thought the government was just so corrupt back home.
Right.
And the freedom of like spirituality too, like spiritual freedom, not because there was the revolution was the Islamic Republic, so that was kind of like downloaded onto people,
right?
Rather than having a freedom to choose, right? So my mom was a little bit of a rebel in her own family, and then she's like, Canada is our land of freedom, basically.
Yeah.
So then we came here, and I grew up. My dad went back home when I was 11, so he only lasted 3 years because the language and the culture, and he's much older than mom. But she's like, I'm not going to take my kids back home because in our education, which is interesting that we're going to talk about education.
Oh yeah.
Like in Iran, if you fall behind just a little bit, you're hooped, right? You need to know things. Like I remember being in grade 2, there's like bombs going off and the lights are out, but my mom by candlelight, because she was a teacher, she would like read me my dictation. So I had to like write, and in grade 2, you know, I was like,
yeah,
I was like my son's age, like the younger, you know, he just finished grade 2.
Right.
No, like getting less than it was out of 20 over there. Like if I got 119, which I did on my one report card, there was like answering to my father of like, what happened? Why did you not get perfect grades, right? So Anyway, so we immigrate here. My dad left. There was a lot of, my mom being a single mom of 3 children herself and being in Canada and having to work so much.
Right.
She sacrificed a lot for us by working a lot to make sure that we didn't financially
Absolutely.
suffer. But
Yeah.
she was physically as available to us. Like we'd have like family night once a week, but the rest of the time,
Right.
me and my siblings, and I'm the
Yeah.
oldest too. So we just kind
Oh,
of
wow.
our own thing. We'd bus to school and back, and then we would
Yep.
bike right across a bridge and back. I'm like, how did she trust us at like 11, 12?
It's a different time, right? Yeah.
Totally different time. There's like bullying going on. I had no idea what bullying was at the time, but we were just being teased and all this stuff.
Right.
And I changed my name to an English sounding name because Goly Baloochy was the full. It was
Oh, okay.
all of this, like no one understood you, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but then my mom moved us from downtown Vancouver, where we lived, to North Van. There was a lot more. North Vancouver had a lot more like Persian families.
Okay.
School, Sufi school, which is the mystics of Islam. It's less dogmatic and like practice based, but it's a lot more about like your love connection with. I don't know how to turn that off, by the way. We might hear that sound.
That's fine.
But it's all about like connecting to the light within you, and creating the openings, that's vessel, so that the divine light
Yes.
would land inside of you, right? So those were like the spiritual classes that we go on like Friday nights, for a few years, but then I became a teenager and I wanted to do other things on
Of
Friday.
course.
But I remember the seeds, they got planted.
Yes.
I kind of saw us as this like, there was one speaker who would talk about, like they'd talk and then they would do the chants and meditation. So the speaker said that, divine, like God, whatever you want to call it, is
Yeah.
the creator. We all came from this source, right? And they
Yeah.
describe it as this like crystal essence that we came from, and it kind of got fragmented into all of our souls, like all the different beings that are on
Yeah.
earth. And then we are all going back to the same, but with a whole bunch of life experiences,
Yep.
being on earth being a game of life
Yeah.
experiences. And so we're all kind of connected. So I was like, oh, we're all connected. There's an inner goodness, there's that inner, and that crystal is within us, that's connected to the
Yeah.
divine. So that was what I kind of knew without really knowing, but there would always be this power of prayer. My grandparents would be like, you're guys are in a foreign land, but we're praying for you. Like our prayers are coming to you from Iran.
Yeah.
I never really understood the power
Yeah.
of, other than, trusting that my dad left for a reason. My grandparents' prayers are with us, bad things, we're protected somehow, with the divine light, right? So long story short, my mom went through a lot of struggles, emotionally, mentally, as well as physically, sacrificing all this stuff, never taking care of herself. And then I was worried about her, and I was like, well, I want to have a family. I want to become a parent, so I need to learn it from the books. So that's what led me into psychology, and I was always curious about how the brain works. And so that was like biopsychology at that time was my entrance after high school into university.
Nice.
Studying the brain and behavior. Yeah, because I was like, how does eating work? How does like all the different medicines work in our brain, and how do the drugs work in our brain, and how does the body communicate with the brain? So it was all of this stuff. And then these elective courses, we call them, where you can choose anything you wanted. I was sort of drawn to family science, which at the time was called family science. Now it's family studies, which is all communication. So how do people communicate inside relationships? Because I was like, well, how do I become the kind of spouse and the kind of parent I want to be if I didn't have that sort of model? With my parents being split and my mom kind of being a workaholic, she just gave us a foundation of like, I have unconditional love for you guys, and we are the 4 pillars. Like she would say, me and my brother and sister and her are the 4 pillars of our.
Beautiful.
So there was that foundation, and then I was like, you communicate, how do you with a partner, so that your marriage doesn't fall apart, so that your kids stay connected to you, because I was mostly connected to myself and my friends. I would like run to my friends. So then that was when education took over. I'm like, I'm going to learn it all from the books. And so family studies became sort of a second major. And after that, I looked up couples counseling and family counseling, and I got into getting my master's in counseling psychology to learn how to help other people with their relationships.
Nice.
And the surprise of that whole experience during my master's was that it was all about me. I had to actually do my own
Right.
introspection.
It's always about you.
all all fingers, and then this whole idea that the mirrors, everything about life is a mirror back to
Yes.
us to reflect, if we so have that awareness or want to see it that way,
Mhm.
right? There's that free will to choose how we
Yeah.
want to view things, right? So yeah, that was a master's experience, was all about like my couples relationships, my grief and loss, my family dynamics, like me,
Mm.
and then from that place of knowing myself, how can I serve other people? So that's what I
Yes.
loved about the master's. And I did about 10 years of working with teens and their parents in family counseling or parent support or youth support. And then
Mhm.
before I had my own kids, because I did that for about 7 years before having my kids, I had so much compassion for the teenagers, because
Yes.
I didn't really get the parents. I was like,
Right. Right.
you guys are just like, being too like judgy and too
Yeah.
like focus on your kids, and look at these beautiful beings, your teenagers. Yes, they might be doing drugs and sex and worrying the crap out of you, keeping you up at night because they don't follow curfew and they're not going to school. Yes, but they're beautiful beings. So then there was this kind of like lack of compassion, I would say, for the parents, and like
Yes.
overload compassion for the child, for the teenager.
Yes.
And then I got to have my own kids. I went on 3 mat leaves, having the same job. And every
Mhm.
time I came back, I had more and more compassion for the parents. I was like, oh my
Yes.
God, these poor parents, you have the best of intentions. You might have this like vision of what kind of parent you're going to be. And then your children arrive, and then, all your stuff falls apart, all your
Yes.
goods, all the vision, this
Yes.
fantasy world, as
Yes.
I know we met through Dr. Shafali's work, like this
Yes.
fantasy of like how things will be shattered. And I think
Well, and we talked about, remember how we talked about that, because I worked with teenagers for years, and as a teacher and like for you as a therapist, that you think like when you have your own kids, you're like, oh, I got this all, and Shafali talks about this, I got this all figured out. Like I tell people how to, work with their kids. And I was the same way. I'd be like, oh, it's always the parents. The parents are, oh, the kids are really beautiful and amazing. And then I was like, oh, yeah, this is really difficult when it's your own children and you're with them all day. Like, you don't get to just send them home after a day, or you don't get to just have one session with them. Like, this is it. They're here all day.
and then the kids are different when you're like the principal or the teacher, like your role or mine as like the therapist, because they're
Yeah.
like just beautiful, you know what I mean? They're there.
Yes.
So then I start to understand this like this prefrontal cortex, how it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
creates all of our plans and our like life lessons, and everything's like right there, very logical. And then there's the
Yes.
emotional the emotional mind, that when
Yes.
you're in that emotional relationship, which we are with our families, and the tightest with our our own family of origin, as well as our own children, our partners. That's when the emotions take over, and that's
Mm.
the oldest part of our mind. So this little prefrontal cortex that's like newly evolved has little power over this powerful emotional side, where
Yes.
that's, yeah, I'm like, okay, emotions take over, and then the compassion needs to be there for parents having it for themselves.
Yeah.
uh, and
And
then
when does the prefrontal cortex develop in an adolescent, or
well
at
that
what point?
well it's the subconscious mind. So I started understanding subconscious mind during like hypnotherapy. Is like the subconscious mind is fully open. Children are in that theta wave, when they're like sponges,
Mhm.
and they absorb everything, and they don't have that frontal thinking, judging kind of brain. So that's full subconscious for the first 7-8 years. And then
Okay.
after that, as as children age around like adolescence, they start to develop more and more, like 12 onwards is that prefrontal cortex. From 8
Okay.
to 12, they're still like, parents are still their gods. They start to,
Yes.
but then they start to have a little bit of like, oh well, there's some differences, and they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
understand the world and the workings of the world. Like, I'm sure you have a 9-year-old and my 8-year-old, they ask all kinds of
Oh
questions.
yeah.
How did the earth come to be? Like, my son is all into dinosaurs and the time before dinosaurs, and like just all about how we all came to be. And then during the adolescent years, I mean, the frontal cortex is developing for boys till age 28, and for
Okay.
girls age 26. So we had this huge, like, extended childhood in a way
Yeah.
where our brain is just so plastic and growing. I mean,
Yeah.
even in adult years, it's still plastic, but it's just this frontal cortex, the mass, the matter amount of it,
Yeah.
still growing, right? And with the teens, I don't know if you've noticed this too, but around age like 17, like it's the 15, 16 is kind of like the peak adolescent time where everything is just like they're still half child, half
Yes.
the adult. And so the highest risk, highest back talk, disrespect, like
Yes.
stuff that goes against us
Yeah.
happens. And then I'm like, make it to 17, 18. There's this maturity that starts to like peek through because now they have a little bit of life experience. So
Yes.
they're like, oh, maybe those decisions, and they start to see some patterns within friends and some patterns within like their parents, and they start to recognize
Mm-hmm.
who they are, this whole like emerging of the self, from the
Yeah.
inside out, starts to happen. And I love that age, like that age when I've talked to people around 17, 18, I'm like, oh, look at you. There's that pressure of like adulting all of a sudden, on this
Yes.
side, and there's this maturity. So there's, just I feel like children really, there is this light within them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think we so share this philosophy of like
Absolutely.
adults have so much power in a way, responsibility, that they influence that light. That light can get kind of cluttered, and so just last year I was like, I found hypnotherapy. I was like, how do you get
Mm-hmm.
back into that subconscious mind that we all
Yes.
I'm like, when my first 2.5 years of my son being born, we were in bliss. We were like in family bliss. Everything was like done properly by the books. I was like
Yeah.
talking to him. It was all this language, all this like interaction, all this play. There was no other siblings to like rival with
Right.
him. And I had my job, and my husband had his job. It was just, he had daycare. I loved the daycare he went to because
Yeah.
it was just, then the second the baby came, and the 2-year-old wanted to play, and I was like a mess. I was like
Yes.
different directions. My needs, needed to nap while
Mm-hmm.
baby, and this 2-year-old that I never trained, on the
Right.
screen to just go and watch something and be quiet.
Right.
So he'd be like knocking on the door or making the thing, and then baby would wake up, and then I'd get mad. So I remember the first time I yelled. That was like my
Mhm.
biggest, most shameful time, where I like my husband came home and I had this confession moment. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I yelled at our Elijah, and then that was when I started to notice, like, despite my best intentions, I'm hooped. There's these things that happen and my emotions take over and I lose it. And so I was like, what do I do? So then philosophies around like how, parents, when you get into your, I think it was like Harville Hendricks, the getting the love you want. I remember we had like
Mm.
this club, and that was one that said in our partnerships, we bring up the wounds of our childhood, that partner
Yes.
brings it up, right? So that's our opportunity
Absolutely.
to heal it and to like how to hold that partner. Well, in our power struggles, me and my husband are both like firstborns. In our power struggles, you're not going to hold each other. You're not going to be emotionally safe enough to hold the person like you would a
Right.
child, and embrace their wounds and help them, heal. So there was all of this going on. And then I learned about children bring that stuff up even more,
Mm. Yep.
so I was like, oh, what's happening when my child doesn't listen to me? This idea of like, take that pause and like go in and
Yeah.
listen. What's really happening for you? And I'm like, well,
Yes.
I'm not feeling seen. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling
Yep.
appreciated, and so where's that coming from? I'm like, oh, that little girl, though all those times, now that
Yep.
I've practiced it more and more, I'm like, it's that little girl inside of me, the little Goly that was like, what about me? Like, listen to my
Right.
needs,
Yeah.
like, take care of me and make me feel safe. And so a lot of that parenting work is actually reparenting ourselves, healing that child, giving her or him what they need, and say, you're okay. I'm here for you now. Like being the
Yeah.
adult self, the parent that you never had for yourself,
Yeah.
and the more we can do that to soothe that inner child, the more we can kind of go back to our full brain and show up for our
Yeah.
children in that compassionate, empathetic, understanding way to then foster their light so that we don't crush their light,
Exactly. To break the cycle. So here's the thing that's really interesting is that you and I had this spiritual connection, like we've kind of been connected through the light and all that. But what you're actually describing is straight up psychology. So what's interesting is, I mean, basically, you're not even going into the real depth of like the spiritual awakening, but what you're saying is, but this is what's interesting. As someone who considers myself a very good high school teacher, a 20-year veteran educator, went to Stanford, the best school, like all the things you're supposed to do in the material world. And what you're describing to me right now, I never learned ever. And I might have gotten one course that gave me like, oh, adolescent psychology, like a little bit understanding of like the teenage brain. So I think one of the reasons we want to talk together is because we feel like right now there's this moment with the school system and the schools and our kids and parents and everyone that's kind of like, how are we going to do better for our next generation? And there's a moment where we're like, what if we start bringing in all these things that you and I have learned that have completely and utterly transformed our lives? And why aren't we talking about this with the teenagers? Why aren't we talking about this with the kindergartners? Why aren't we talking about this with all ages? And a school system that is really built on, you're in Canada, I'm in the US, but the similarities are pretty, close. And the school system's built on kind of like 20th century, 19th century ideas. And no, we're just not getting this. I mean, there is like mindfulness is kind of having its day in the US and I'm assuming in Canada, and we're starting to have like an entry, but you and I were talking about what if we could actually teach kids, or not even teach them, what if we could create an environment for kids, because they already know, and just guide them to stay in their light. Because what you were saying is it's around, this is interesting around the brain development, the subconscious mind, is that it around what you said, 7 or 8 years old, that it starts to change or whatever. And so that's the age. What happens?
You become more conscious, like conscious
Okay.
to,
Right.
the things and critical thinking and all that starts to happen.
And that's when a lot of the conditioning and the false self starts to be developed. So then you start to think that you're not that light that you were from like 0 to 7 or whatever. And so anyway, so many things to talk about. So I do want you to share that whole, we'll weave that in, but tell people about what you're thinking about with creating like a wellness center for families, because one of the things that I really loved about, so we met like a week ago, and we talked for 2 hours. I was like, I could talk to her for 400 hours. But what I loved about your idea is that I have this really intuitive feeling that the way we're going to change education and the way we're going to kind of, show a new way is by getting communities together and starting to really bring parents and get more involved. And that COVID is really giving us like a massive opportunity to say, oh, maybe we should stop outsourcing our children. Maybe we should stop being stressed out all day, every day, and then wonder why our kids are disconnected, So anyway, so share the wellness center idea. And I know that's going to bring like a bunch of cool things.
Well, I mean, the fact that you reached out, like I made a comment, I think Holly Hall had written or posted something about a piece about education from her book into young people. I'm like, oh my God, this speaks to like my whole dream of a center or being able to homeschool the kids or having a place where you can have families be well. And then right away, you like, let's jump on a Zoom call. I'm like, I like this guy. He's like, just jumps right on it. I love that you just sort of followed whatever got you to just say, let's have a
it's intuition. Yeah, because I read your couple sentences and I was like, oh, she gets it. She's tapped into something beyond the like this realm, beyond the material world, that's helping us, people like us, see that there's a whole nother way to do this. And just by you describing it in 3 or 4 sentences in the comments, I was like, okay, I need to talk to her immediately. And it wasn't like the mind wasn't there. It was just like, okay, yes, that's her. I need to talk to her. And then of course, once we talked, it was like.
And that's what I'm talking about. So this whole idea was around like the struggle. Like I think our struggles are such like gifts for growth. And so as a parent, I was always like going, what do I sign my kids up for? Do I go taekwondo? Do I go for soccer? Do I go for gymnastics, dance, acro? And then I'm like, do I chauffeur them? And then I did do some classes, and well, the parents is just sort of sitting there watching, and then they're thinking and stressed out, like, what are they going to eat? Am I going to do drive-through? Am I going to, buy something? One of my friends and I would joke about this organic drive-through that would just make our lives so much easier.
Yes.
Our children, like, nothing against drive-through, but you know what I mean. So that you actually feel like you're nourishing your child, like without the toxins and the chemicals and all that stuff. So I'm like, wouldn't it be nice, right, if there was this like space where parents and children got to go in? At that time it was more like after school, but now that schools are who knows what we're going to have.
Yeah.
We might have some kind of situation where there's like partly homeschool online and some it's going to be in person, but smaller classrooms. Who knows what's going to happen, right? But I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we had this center where the children were given a chance to kind of look into themselves and what was I born to do? What's my purpose in life? How do I know
Mhm.
what my purpose in life is? Having these little, intuition hacks, if you will, like, do I do a muscle test to find out this way
Yeah.
or this way, or the yes feeling,
Mhm.
like idea of like putting on their like favorite clothes,
Mhm.
so that they get that embodied feeling of like the yes feeling, and then
Mm.
on like their most terrible stuff that they don't like at all, and getting that real sense of that no feeling, and then also like
Mm.
the maybe stuff, right? So ways that to help children connect to this intuitive knowing, this inner
Yeah.
wisdom that we all have, right?
Absolutely.
My biggest heartbreak is, why were we all born like children? Like, I see the children, I'm like, they just so know themselves. They know exactly
Yeah.
what they want. They're persistent. They'll go after it. They will show their emotions. They will release
They're
it right
free. Yeah.
away. They're
Mhm.
free. Exactly. And we all, I think, seek freedom, and ease and peace, and a piece of harmony that comes with that naturally when you're yourself at peace and ease.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be nice to have a place where children get that kind of inner education, or whatever you want to call that, cultivation of that inner wisdom,
Yeah.
as well as their bodies. Like, I think it's so important to move the body, as well as like nourishing the body with like healthy foods and like education around foods. Because how many picky eaters do we have? How many parents do we have? I know my mom friends too. I see your eyes that are wondering, how do I get them to eat the rainbow, and how to,
Oh my
and how to make
gosh.
it fun? Because kids,
Yeah.
I've learned, the more playful you are with them, the more
Mhm.
song and dance and a rhythm, like
Yeah.
Daniel Tiger does. I'm like, how do they do that? They make everything a song.
Yes.
And, on my best days, I'm like, let me give it a chance. I'll make everything jingle. Like, now we're gonna clean up together because together it's more fun, or whatever, right? And so just teaching them real like ways of being in the world and connecting to their own beings, and they're socializing through that, like kindness is
Yes.
king. And I teach my kids, I'm like, where's the real magic? And they're like, oh, it's in our minds, right? Like, your mind has the real magic to manifest what you want. And so they'll do this like focus. I hope my toy comes today. I hope my toy comes today. And then it comes and they're like, oh my God, it worked. These little ways for them to really have,
Yes.
and they're so pure. Like, there's none of this decluttering that we adults have to do.
Mhm.
They just can create. They're manifestors. They're natural manifestors. Like, I am in awe of my children. How fast,
Yeah.
despite our best, like, nope, no more toys, nope, no more
Exactly.
sugar, nope, no more sugar. It just, you know, you might think I'm just like a pushover, but they just somehow they're so persistent
No,
in
we all are. This generation of parents, we're all just like, we don't know what we're doing our best.
and that's where I think Dr. Shafali talks about, like, our children are our best teachers,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
we are still connected to what we have lost in a way. We're trying to reconnect, and they're kind of like this like way shower. They're like, oh look, this is what
Yeah.
being totally in the playful mode and joy and connected to your like essence is all about, and you're like,
Yes.
oh man. So I sit with my daughter, and she's just like so tuned in to play. She's not worried about what's for breakfast, what get my exercise. And like, I'm thinking, I meditate to clear my head, I need to exercise to energize my body, I need to like become present. I have all of this stuff, this rituals to get myself into the zone that she is naturally.
She's already there. Yes.
Like, how, right? So on one hand, I don't want to disconnect. So I'm like a center, a place that nourishes that, fosters that capability, so that children stay playful, they stay trusting themselves. Because as teenagers, I remember being a total like, I was afraid to like eat in front of people, or even go to the
Oh yeah.
bathroom in those public bathrooms. Like,
Oh yeah.
maybe too much info, but it was just that self-conscious. Like, I was so like
Yes.
not
Everything.
right. I'm
Me
like,
too.
why, why do that to us? I know it's a psychological shift that happens where you become
Yeah.
like that conscious thing of like, you're different than me. So what might you be
Right.
thinking about me that's different than what I'm thinking about you? And are you aware that whole psychological thing happens? But why not have that ability to be so strong, into connection with yourself,
Yeah.
that doesn't really phase you? It's there, but it's not something that like makes you become suicidal or need to self-medicate with the drug,
Right.
the extreme disconnect that happens with some of our teens, right? And
Yep.
earlier years. and then have the parents also, because I feel like we need parents who are cultivating and reconnecting to their life by healing
Yes.
obstacles, releasing the stuff, you know, so that
Yes.
they're not just driving and paying and doing all this stuff for their
Yeah.
children, and meanwhile stressed out, stagnant energy bodies themselves, you know.
Yeah.
So they move their body, they move their energy, maybe through yoga, meditation,
Yeah.
dance, music, and then they
Yes.
eat together, so you don't have to worry about food. You know, you can eat organic foods and smoothies, and you know,
Yes.
something about the rainbow in there, you know, to gut health, you know, because I learned how much the gut is actually the biggest brain that, you know, helps have like the neurotransmitters and all the
Yep.
hormones. Like it's all starts from the gut, the bacteria and all that, right? I know
Yep.
none of this. I go to after school, I would go to like the junk food section of the, you know, corner stores on my way home from school every single day. Just
Oh, me
binge
too. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah.
every allowance I had went to candy and chocolates, you
It's all
know,
about the high fructose.
and no idea. Like my mom didn't know, right? So,
No.
um,
Yeah.
but that's also the compassion that I have for parents, because I'm like, this is, I think we
Yeah.
talked about this. This is like the first generation where we are
Yeah.
so aware of the patterns of the past, the obstacles of the past, the things that don't serve our highest
Mhm.
good, that actually disconnected us from ourselves and then
Yeah.
from each other. You know, the humanity
Yes.
connected, and like we're trying to remember and bring everyone kind of back to that human
Yes.
consciousness, the collective consciousness, and through our individual connections, right? So that compassion is, we're in that weird place between the old and the new, and we're trying to
Yes.
leap into the new and bring our children
Yes.
along, but then we kind of go one step forward, 10 steps back in this conscious parenting business.
Okay, but your idea to me is the bridge. So that's why I love it so much. So now I know why I responded to your message so quickly without thinking at all. Because I told you this. I had this it's a very intuitive feeling about creating this Heart of the Matter web platform that allows people to see that there's new ways of doing school, and being with our kids and parents and all that, and then really showing people the way, and then finding programs that are doing this, and then highlighting them and amplifying them and supporting people that want to build these programs. So that was before COVID. Then COVID came, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it right now. And then it's we've talked about Michael Beckwith and others, but he talks about this great change that we're find a wisdom teacher that's not talking about this. Like this is the moment of great change, and we're the universe is shifting and things are shifting. And like you said, our generation is ready to make the shift, and the younger generation's even well beyond that. So you're very simple, I'm using a lot of air quotes, your simple idea, which is actually not that complex, but what it's doing is it's literally tearing down the whole entire paradigm. That's why I love it, okay? You're a visionary because you're tapped in. And this is why, because the current paradigm, let's be really clear, before COVID and what we're hoping to rush back to is outsourcing our children, high teenage suicide, high anxiety, like a millennial generation that has high anxiety, like parents overscheduling their kids, activities, academics, like all these things going on. And that's kind of the norm. So what you're talking about is getting people together to actually be, number one, what I'm calling the heart-centered school movement, which is connect the heart. So everyone within that space, you're creating a sacred space, which is so beautiful. I'm going to tag my friend Stacy because we talk about this all the time. You're creating a sacred physical space, but this also can be done like virtually in the whole school closing. You're creating a sacred space, and in that sacred space, the center of everything is intuition, wisdom teaching, staying connected to your light, like amazing. And then the way it all plays out is simple things like, so I'm thinking just like a basic martial arts, right? Like a lot of our kids do karate. And so instead of just teaching them karate, yeah, it's literally, and just so you know, this is the vision I've been having for 6 years, that there would be these community centers, community spaces across the world where people are actually doing this. I didn't know what it was, and now you help me see that it's some version, multiple versions of this. And I will tell you that the best schools I've seen, because I've traveled and seen schools across the country and outside the United States, are always the ones that didn't start as a school. They started as an after-school program. They started and they were so successful. People were like, "Oh wait, why are we doing this at school? You know, school is so weird." So anyway, So beautiful. That's why I responded to you, because you're tapped into something much bigger than just your community and your idea.
And this is why I loved when you came on board. Like I remember you had friend requested, and at the beginning of Heart of the Matter, I'm like, wait, there's an actual person who is a professional in the system, like this, the school systems, the principal. Like you've been on every level of education. I've been telling all my friends and family, I'm like, there's a real person. He's like actually in the school
He's
system.
real.
Who's like wanting, because I always thought maybe it's just my naive thinking. I've always told that, you know, you see the good in everybody and you have this like thinking about, you know, stuff, you know, there's this, my archetype is like around innocence and magic and stuff. And I'm like, why can't this be? And so you kind of like legitimized it, you know, you like validated it and said, this can be a reality. And I was like, oh, what? Like, it just like, that's why I'm so like charged, because you have a dream and then you kind of make it like dormant because you hear like you don't see the way, you know, it's just like this dream fantasy and I'm like, okay, settle down, you know, like let's put that on the back burner and deal with it, you know. And so this whole idea, I was like, I can't believe someone else who's actually in the system understands education so deeply on so many levels, and you're connected to your intuition and you've done your work, you know, to like clear the space within yourself to kind of the way forward. And it's a reform, it's a change. I think that's why you kind of, my doubts come in, because I'm like, well, it's such a different way of looking at things. I think there are like with this, like you said, like the social emotional learning that is already in schools. Like I love our school because they do like a morning calm, like mornings with the kids over the PA system. Everybody in the building has to, you know, move their body a little bit just to stretch, parents and kids, all of us, and then breathe, and then that's it. And it's kind of like a intention for the day, right?
And that's what, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes, and it's called the morning calm. It's exactly 5. They also invite parents to stay for the first 15, 20 minutes.
Beautiful.
Children inside their classroom, and they call it you time for the kids to empower them to kind of show their parents around, engage in any activity that they like. So the parents, you know, and then it's sad because a lot of parents are obviously rushed off to their own work, and the kids who don't have a parent are sort of sitting there with like a book trying to get other parents to kind of read for them or whatever. But it's just a nice idea that it kind of helps transition children into this like space of a new caregiver, another adult who's going to be someone that they trust to spend 6 hours with them, you know. And who knows, after school care, before school care, there's hours and hours that we're away, like you said, outsourcing our children to make a living and to run like, so the ideas of like really everyone tapping into their own purpose, that abundance is there, like to remove those blocks and to say that, well, if we all have some kind of gift, like we're all I see humans as like a puzzle, a giant puzzle, and we're all pieces of the puzzle. We all play specific roles to connect with each other in this puzzle, right? So then if we're really tapping in to what our purpose is, what we were born to do as adults, making money, making a living, and it's a should in my head, right? Another fact is that it should be easy. It should just be a natural flowing thing because you're following the joy. You know, I always say like follow the breadcrumbs of your joy. When you are in that joyful place, you feel playful, you feel open and creative, and ideas just kind of like flow. And then versus I'm conditioned into the shoulds, you know, and I should do this and I should do this, and then you're kind of at this job that pays you well, but you're so disconnected, or someone that's not appreciating you in this money exchange, right? And we can get into kind of the money stories that we have about why we should not be abundant, because whatever, people who have the money have the power and they're not very nice people or whatever we have around that. Me and my husband were just talking about this, but that abundance should be there, you know, and children can learn about that we're not in this fear mode of like scarcity, you know. We can actually be in a loving space around life and abundance and other humans. And that, you know, I always tell the kids, I'm like, if you open us, like on the outside, we all look different, but if you open us, we're pretty much the same on the inside. And so there's this difference, this separation based on fear of the unknown, the difference. How to really help children understand the difference is great because it's like, again, that mosaic, that puzzle, we're all serving a different piece of it.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to separate us. It can actually unite us,
Yes.
through our differences rather than separate. And
Yeah, and what's so interesting too about what you're saying is that I feel like before I kind of went through the spiritual journey that I felt like we should create schools that are really creative. And Ken Robinson, he's a British professor. He has his Creative Schools book, and I agree. But as I've gone through the journey, I'm like, what if we actually created the schools that you're just talking about, or the environments for the kids, where it's like all about keeping them in their light and just really trusting their intuition, and then it's like their creativity would be amazing, and the academic learning, like learning how to read and learning how to write, all that stuff would come with so much easier than doing it the opposite way, which is really making it like difficult and hard and the hustle and not the flow. And then it's like they're struggling, and it's the adults are disconnected, the kids are disconnected, and like you said, and then we're building, we have a social paradigm where it's all about like, okay, let's get them prepared for the rat race. And then once they get out of this rat race, they're going to get to the next, and then they're just taking a different race. And we're Michael Beckwith says, like, if you're talking about the rat race, you're still talking about rats. Okay, so we got to change the paradigm.
And then this whole idea other just to climb to the top, there's all the competition and all the differences in schools and competition, instead of saying, hey, the main point was, did you have fun? Did you have fun playing that game? And there's going to be a person who comes first and a person who comes second and third. Like, again, we're all serving a purpose here. So we're all going to find somewhere, and so there's none of this like need to like leap over someone, and that the first is good, last is bad, like judging it, and so and then I love what you said about the creative school. Like, I know Abital from Parenting Junkie, she had mentioned the idea that you can learn everything. There's a book called You Can Learn Everything from Anything. And the idea, whatever the anything is, whatever the child, or I guess the adult too, is into, you can teach them learning, the reading, the writing, the math, the physics, the chemistry through what they're interested in. And I was like, wow, that's, or like in Finland, they're talking about phenomenon learning, about like actual phenomena that happens in nature that they're naturally curious about. They're asking all kinds of questions about, how did the rain happen? How did the flowers grow? How do we, where does our food come from? Like all of these things. How does our gut work? Like our system, where does our food eat it? And, all this stuff. So like, there's a whole perspective, I think, if we don't just put so much pressure, I think, on educators to kind of come up with all this. Yes, there's a need for them to learn all these different ways of like reading, writing, math. But again, it's like if we can cater that and be a little bit more open to the child saying, hey, I'm really into this. Like my kids are in Montessori. It's a somewhat like that, where you get to.
Yeah, it's a beautiful program.
Yeah, the curriculum has to still be met during the week, but the child gets to choose, at what day they get to do which part of it, which I think is, letting the child steer their own ship in a way. Fostering that like sense of confidence and self that I know what's best for me, and the adults around me support that. They're not gonna like punish me. They're not gonna like time out me because I didn't conform. I wasn't obedient. This whole idea. It's very parallel to parenting. And one of the things when my child was having struggles in kindergarten, and we were trying to figure out how do we help him kind of regulate his emotions, and it was amazing because he not only got him to connect with his own heart when he's like, when you did that, how was your heart feeling? Was it smiling or sad? So helping children stay connected to their own heart when they do something. And so, the actions, right? Like this, the choice mattered. They're like they had like a picture graph where if you choose this, this, and this, it'll lead you to this. And if you choose this, this, and this, it's like a fork in the road, right? How many times do we have a fork in the road? But you get to choose, which way you like. And so he liked to go to the principal's office too. But then they gave us that as a home practice too, so that there was this parallel going on. Parenting and the educators, and then there was this dialogue between us and the teachers. I'm like, that was actually a really good thing that he was not necessarily conforming to everything that needed to happen in school. That got us adults more aligned with each other on how to help, right? And so
and what you're bringing up is that there's so many beautiful things going on in schools all the time. It's not like schools are so terrible. Like as a teacher and an educator, like there's beautiful things going on. I think the shift, and I talk about this with Montessori, is a lot of times I'll say, when I first talked about our school in Sacramento that I started, it's really focused on self-direction and the whole child and heart-centered. People always be like, that sounds just completely crazy. Like you're just gonna have the kids run around like crazy people. I'm like, no, no, no. You just switch the structure. So in a factory model school, the structure is like the teacher tells you, and then there's 42 rules and all that. And like in a Montessori school or in a heart-centered school, there's different structures to create the world and society you want. So what we need to do is we need to shift the paradigm from the 19th century school model so that these amazing teachers don't have to work against the current, but rather you create the environments where they're in the current and they just get to flow with the kids. And the teachers that are exhausted and worn out and all that, it's not their fault. The system is designed to actually create separation and hierarchy and competition and all these other things that were maybe we can argue were appropriate for like 1890 or like 1920, but that's 100 years ago. So we have to evolve.
Not when we're exactly. We're trying to collectively shift to this like unity of like the humans understanding why we're here and this spiritual shift that's happening. I think that's the gift of COVID and having to have like smaller classes where like the few people who went back to school before the summer break, they described the children and the teachers were having so much fun because 5 students instead of 18 or 20 students connecting with one teacher. So the teacher got to really get to know the child and their learning style and all of this, as well as the student got that attention. But they got seen. I think children being able to and heard.
Everyone.
Yeah, and adults, exactly. But imagine they got to have that as their like lived experience. They know no difference. Like we know that of being shut down, having to conform, having been punished, having been like, basically to different degrees, right? Having the don't listen to yourself, listen to conform, like listen.
It's all shame, yeah.
The external world tells you more so than when your internal world is telling you.
Yep.
Right? And so that shift is happening for us, and the more we connect to that inner light, so that's where I was like the mind, body, and spirit, all attended to in both homes and schools, and community center where we can do it through community, like connection with each other, so that instead of getting together with other parents and we can vent and have our like war stories or all this, my children or whatever. But also, what are we learning from this experience? What is this experience we do in our like Shafali's groups or like the luminous people? That's all about like, okay, how do you sit with your own stuff? How they're trying to just correct it all and be like in this happy-go-lucky place. That's not. You have to actually go into the feeling and acknowledge the feeling in order for that energy to release from us. And then our natural, I think, is it Michael Neal? He does like the super coaching book, but he's all about like our innate being. He quotes someone else, I can't remember. Is wellness. Our innate ability is wellness. It's just it gets out of us. So the whole process of healing is to really just declutter the space, open, and that inner wellness is there. Knowing is there. The physical wellness is there. The connection to others that we want when we're in that space of love and you can see that vibration, we want to give, we want to share that. It's like exploding. It's not this like tit for tat, like keeping
which is why we need to take care of the adults too. And I think part of the matter is really about building conscious schools, thinking about conscious leadership, so that at all different levels, and then also conscious healing, so that we're really thinking about the adults that are working with kids, that we take care of them too. But I want to ask you something before I forget. So, okay, you're a mom of 3 kids. You have a therapy business, I believe, a coaching business, and you have 3 kids, 3, 5, and 8, which 3, 5, and 8-year-old kids enough is like more than a full-time job. And now you have this beautiful idea to create like some version of a community center. So, but that's really hard, right? Because you're like, I can't just turn around and, However, as we know from doing the wisdom and learning from wisdom teachers, that it's always about just taking the small little steps and then figuring out the feeling tone or what you really believe you want like the formless to turn into the form. So I have this feeling that with this moment in the US now, everyone's kind of creating these pod schools. which, you know, you find 5 families and you share a teacher and this and that. And that's a whole other conversation that I'm worried about the equity issue. But regardless of that, I do think there's an opportunity for you and others to just take like a small step and start creating these environments in your neighborhood or just something to kind of, so that's what I guess I would love to ask you, like, I know you're super busy and this is a lot, but you did say it's your dream. So what are some like small turtle steps or like places, things that can keep you aligned towards this dream so that eventually it kind of, you know, comes together and you follow the breadcrumbs and then there's a ripple effect because you're doing it and then someone else is doing it. And the next thing you know, we have 100 across the world. And then part of the matter is like interviews all of you and then shares all of it. And it's like, wait, we have 100? Oh, let's make it 1,000. Let's make it 100,000. And next thing you know, like there's 1 million of these types of schools across the world and it took 5 years. But it starts with one person taking one step and following their dream. So what are you gonna do, Goly? No, I'm kidding.
I know it's like the responsibility. Like, watch out what happens when you put your dream out there, and they got
Be careful what you ask for.
an answer to it and take action, right? Because it's not just imagining; it's like action, like inspired action.
Yeah.
It's a great question because I do feel like this thing of like not wanting to miss out on the childhood of my kids and wanting to be that parent, wanting to be present with them and playful and not be pulled a million different directions. So that does.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, that does kind of concern me of like this whole idea of like a wellness center because I was kind of like a integrative health center in back in October, and I felt like with that and my community job as well as my own practice, it's too much. Like it was pulling me like 5 days of the week. I'm like, I can't be busy working 5 days of the week.
No.
COVID happened. My kids were complaining and saying, "Mom, you're always working. You're always busy." So I took that as a cue to just like super slow down.
Yes. Yes.
Having said that, I've been having this conversation with mom friends. Like you said, it all starts from who you already know.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, wouldn't it be nice if we had a space, because pretty much every single parent expressed some frustration with this whole homeschooling, and my concern is that it does interfere with the parent-child bond.
Yeah.
So like on your previous video, you had mentioned about maybe a group of families just kind of getting together, creating a space, whether it's in someone's home or I was going to check with the community centers because they're all kind of closed, but there's all space everywhere. You can have a space with a physical distancing, space people out, but sharing, the tasks, and like maybe each parent has their own unique skills and abilities. Come in and do the movement stuff. One can come in and do like the nurturing, like the nourishment, the business, right? And the other one can do maybe the meditation or some kind of inner wisdom teaching, something like that, right? And the one could maybe a tutor or someone who actually knows how to educate can come in and say, okay, so today children, we're doing this activity, but maybe have it be like the children get to vote on how, like what theme they get to pick on that to learn stuff from, and field trips and that kind of stuff. But starting within that family, and like you said, sharing resources, pooling resources. And then I thought to make it accessible, because I thought of the whole center, there's that education movement, nourishment, like mind, body, spirit, parents and the kids, on the times that we have to be with our children. But then there's a part of like the healers that are also there, the deeper work like counseling, hypnotherapy, massage therapy, healers, all of that, acupuncture, naturopathic doctors, all that stuff, but because paying for one-on-one healing and all that is expensive, I thought if subsidized somehow by the government, that says, hey, we want to really, I talked about this with my husband, like we want to really help parents keep their jobs, but they also have to childcare. So how about if you subsidize something like this, so the parents, put in some money to like a monthly membership or something like that, where instead of paying all these separate like places to get all these things met, have it all in one place. And then the government can also subsidize it, so it's manageable, it's affordable. And then parents can kind of be part of the process, like maybe volunteer like 2 hours of their day or 1 day of their week or whatever way sense, bring in their own. I'm always looking at mom friends. I'm like, you guys have such, like each person has such special skills that why not allow that to be your you pass forward to the next generation. And kids get along with each other. Like, why not have these kids who already click with each other, and like you said, multi-age, because that helps
Yeah.
them have like leadership roles as well as like
Yep.
they had this roots of empathy that lost its funding, where they would bring a baby actually to the classroom, and the children would get to kind of address the needs or
Oh,
guess
nice.
about this baby
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
develop their empathy. And they found that in those schools, those children had much less bullying, much less conflict,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
all of that. So
Yeah.
kind of center. I don't know if that answers your question. It's sort of
No, it does. It absolutely answers my question. And I think what you're getting at is, so first of all, if we can start to think about it as an integrated thing, because the current model is separated. So how do I go to work from 9 to 5? How do I get at my school, when we first opened, we weren't sure if we're gonna do before and after care as a small charter school. And then every single parent's like, do you have before and after care? It's like, oh, I guess we got to figure this out, you know? And so we have kids in our building from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. every day, like a lot of kids every day. So working class community, some people working 3 jobs, single moms, you know, there's various factors why it's not their fault, but it's like a systemic issue. And so what you're saying is, first of all, let's think about changing the business model. So there's so much funding that goes into all these programs. Let's think about getting some nonprofits that can be funded. Let's think about when you left me the message about like, how could we get the government to come in? I think there's a lot of opportunity right now to start saying like, well, everything's got to change. And so let's think about how do we, like I said, create a nonprofit. It's going to have to happen. What's really clear to me is that, and this is definitely coming from a very intuitive place, it's not going to be like somebody from the top is going to change the law and then it's going to go down. It's going to be like the collective coming together, like every social movement, every revolution, like people from, you know, get together, they create it, and then eventually the powers that be catch up and start to change the laws, change the policy. So yes, you answered my question, because I think that a lot of us are going to be home with our kids and it's integrated. Like you're going to be doing this anyway. Like right now, this whole entire time we've been on this interview, my wife and the 2 kids have been in a fight. Like I'm like, the universe is so precise. It's literally like, oh, you're going to be sharing how it's so amazing to have your kids at home. Well, you're going to be watching them through the window and in the living room as they're navigating, and my wife is navigating this conflict. And I'm like, she's doing a great job. But I'm like, just let it go. Let it go. It's getting really interesting out there.
Me and my husband, like they just came home. He's like making lunch for them, and they're probably watching something so that they don't me. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be okay with that, you know. But wouldn't it be nice if they had like if we all had that space where we can attend to our careers that are like,
yes,
but not feel guilty about our children being somewhere that they're not happy being.
yes,
They feel disconnected, where they feel connected and excited, like how they are when they want to go play with somebody, you know, like play dates.
exactly.
And the hours are shorter, because I don't know about this, you know, like you say 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Wow. My heart goes out to,
Yeah,
like, there is a privilege in being able to have more time, as well as in your like day-to-day expenses and stuff, but to have your children not be away from you so much, because this first 12 years, like Dr. Shafali was also talking about, we get 12 years to really have that influence and parent guide, but the rest of it after 12, it's kind of like we have to come alongside them. So we have to know who our children are, and that relationship, that bond, like with the teens, and like it's a bond that bridges over the cooperation, the behavioral stuff that parents are so worried about. But that bond has to be nurtured, that foundation in the early years. And so why are we disconnected? Because, you know, we're struggling in our early years for this retirement when our children are grown up and leave the house and we're empty nesters. Richard, Dave, sorry, I think I'll do it.
It's okay, everyone does. I have 2 first names. Okay, but here's what you're saying, which I love, which is if we can really start to, so for example, you and many others that will listen to this could get together with a few other families and just try out some version of this, what you're calling a wellness center. And I know when I asked you the question about the wellness center that you kind of moved your body a little. I'm like, oh, that's like stressing her out. But if you just take it down to, it's not a wellness center yet. Right now, it's just little tiny pieces. And I've spent a lot of time studying innovation theory and like how you create change and stuff like that. And it's literally just like small tests, you keep testing. And the really cool thing too about innovation theory is that the people that make the biggest change within the industry actually know enough to be dangerous, but they're not experts. So that's why people like you, like moms, are amazing, because they're not trained educators, yet they're teachers all day, every day. So they don't have all the dogmatic ways of this is how you do this, and this is what we've been trained to do. So I can never imagine this paradigm. that you have enough, you know, kids well enough to be dangerous. So it's like, what if you got together with your friends and you started testing out, like one of your friends is really good at meditation, or like I know 10 people that could do a Zoom for 10 minutes with kids on meditation from the Shafali courses, all the people I've met. They could do a 10-minute recording. We could pool our money and pay them or whatever, and we could just sit with the kids and do it. You know, there's so many opportunities. So you start doing that, maybe start a YouTube channel, maybe do a Facebook group, something simple that you're already doing it, and then just document it, or just, and then again, Heart of the Matter can be the facilitator that then puts up, you know, maybe you do a once a week video log on, you know, blog or whatever, or maybe you write something about it, or maybe your friends, you interview your friends, and then we just put it up on Heart of the Matter, and then more and more people are like, oh wait, this sounds like a good idea. Why are we doing school the way we've been doing it for 200 years?
I love it. I love how you kind of ideas and you kind of check them down to these baby steps that are like doable, realistic, manageable, you know,
Yeah.
and resourceful, like using the resources within the community that we already have.
Yes.
So 100%. I love it.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to wrap up because it's almost been an hour. But I would just like to give you the opportunity to share any things. Maybe you're like, oh, I wanted to say this or I want to say that. Just kind of like, you know, close up and share any final thoughts before we say goodbye.
Well, mostly this has just been so exciting. I have the same like excitement that I had when I first talked to you. So I'm
yes, me too.
And now it's feeling like it's coming down to more and more like clarity. You know, I feel like
yes,
clarity on this. And on Wednesday, I'm excited because I'm going to actually have my first reading with Holly Hall. If you're watching, I'm so excited.
Nice.
You told me about it, and other people have told me about her. You know, readings like really just connecting you back to your own, gaining clarity, gaining direction. I think that's so important for all of us to kind of take this time that we've had to slow down. I mean, some people have really slowed down during COVID. Some people have become even busier because of having children and home businesses and all this kind of stuff. But taking this time to say, hey, what really is my priority? What matters to me? And who can I align with? Like, this is all people, connecting to the people who align with you, and together there's power in numbers, right? To bring our visions to life. So I'm so grateful, like heartfelt thank you for this opportunity to share, and I love what you're doing. I love the platform that you've created. I think it's you're guiding yourself by listening to your intuition, you know, and not so much the naysay critic inside, the critical mind, you know. So, and you're right, I do have like my Facebook group with Mama Love. I started that, and I haven't known really how to like do my daily fostering of that. I've just been doing my personal pages, but maybe
it's all integrated.
Yeah, we bring it all together, like you said, and it's giving me a lot of hope. So I'm excited to see the feedback and where this all kind of continues to go and grow from. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's so great. I knew we had to get on a live because we were trying to talk on the phone, and I was like, I need to see this person. Like, I need to see her light in her face. And you are so lit up right now. And I always remind this of people when I hear them talk about their visions and the things that they're like, really is like their alignment with their purpose. It's so clear. If you watch this back and you look at, I think I wrote it down. It was like 20 minutes in, you'll see how you lit up when you started talking about this whole kind of integration of all the pieces of yourself. It's really just a reflection of your highest self. And it's beautiful to watch. And I'm so excited we got to do it. And we're going to keep in touch. I know we will.
Yeah. And I love the confidence now because it's coming from your inner guidance. And I'm like,
yes,
we want, you know, our children to develop into these kind of adults where they're
exactly
just so passionate. And I always tell them, if you're so aligned with your purpose, then work and play become one of the same. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like play, and you're excited to show up. You know, because aligned, right? You're just speaking your truth, and your truth happens to create the life that you want, and it's simple. You know what I mean? We can kind of shift it to that direction, and so.
Yep, we overcomplicate it. It's actually not that complicated. All right, well, thank you, Goly, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.